So the last video I did was kind of the theory behind multiplying integers, and most of the examples I did involved 1 or -1. So it was just about, what to do with different signs. This one I'm just going to work some examples right out of the book, and I suggest you follow along. So I'm going to start right away on page 87 and look right at the top, and there's the example 4. So example 4. And the question that they are trying to get answered is this expression. Okay? Now, the first thing that I would do in a situation like this is I'd say, okay, well, how many negatives do I see? Or how many different kinds of signs do I see? Well, I see a negative there, and I see a negative there, making a total of 2 negatives. Okay, so I'm going to stick my negatives right there. And then I'm just going to rewrite the numbers. 4, 12, and 5. And if you look closely, there's a property it says is the commutative property, which basically just means I can write my multiplication in any order, right? 4 times 12 times 5 is the same as 5 times 12 times 4, which is the same as 4 times 5 times 12. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to put it in the order that I feel like is easiest for me. So I put 2 negatives, just like it has up there, and then I'm going to write 4, 5, and 12. So those 2 negatives I'm allowed to stick out front like that. That's fine, okay? 4 times 5, well, that's 20. 20 times 12, well, that's kind of hard to do. So let me just do it this way. I'll say 5 times 12. Well, that's 60. I should know that. If you don't know that, you should try to memorize your 12 times tables. But 60, okay, so now I have 60 times 4. Well, 60 is really 6 times 10, and I need to multiply that by 4. Okay, well, remember, commutative property, 6 times 4, right? These two multiplied give me 24. So that's 24 times 10, which is just 240, right? So now I know that the quantity that this comes out to, disregarding those negative signs is 240. Well, what do I do with those negatives? Well, if you watched the last video, you found out that 2 negatives together just cancel each other out, right? They both become positives. It's just like adding the integers. So the answer is just 240, no negative, okay? The next example is right below that, example 4b. And the example they have it's sort of similar. They have -3, -4, and -5. These are a bunch of negatives together. Now, what do I do? Okay, so again, I count the negatives. I got 1, 2, 3 negatives. So I'm going to go at 3 negatives out front. Then I'm just going to write my numbers, 3, 4, and 5. Okay? Now I'm just thinking on the fly here. 3 times 4 is 12. And the reason I did that is 12 times 5, well, I already worked it from the last example. One key thing in math you can do and should do is remember what you did before, because you may have already solved the problem. So 12 times 5 is 60, right? We did that already. Now, what do I do with these negatives? Okay, I pair them up, right? 2 negatives. What happens to 2 negatives? They become 2 positives. In other words, they kind of don't even exist. So the only thing I'm left with is this 1 negative. I stick that out front in front of this guy right here, and he becomes -60. Guess what? That's the answer. Awesome. Okay, next problem. Well, what do I do if I have variables, right? These are straight numbers I've been giving you, but what if I have variables? So look down at, let's do question 5b, okay? This is not too complicated of an example, but it does involve some variables that you can't mix together, okay? And actually, let me make this y expression yellow, and I'll make this x orange, just to show that these are letters that you shouldn't be mixing together. Well, what I do is, oh, sorry, this is -9. What I do is, I stick my negatives out front, and then I write my numbers, and then I write my letters, okay? And that's the way you got to keep it. Letters with letters, numbers with numbers. What's 9 times 3? That's 27. XY, leave it there. The negative, leave it there. There's only one of them. The answer, -27XY. Page 88, number 26. But what you're going to want to do is the same method, okay? Count my negatives. 1, 2, 3. So 3 negatives. Put my numbers, 12 and 3, and then put my letters, J and K. Okay? 12 times 3 is 36. How many negatives? 2 of them cancel out. I'm left with 1, J, K. That is the answer. Some speed there, huh?